is great to see all of you. I recognize a lot of faces. I recognize a lot of names. And I am really, really excited because we're going to do something new and different at the university, which should hopefully work to your advantage. So I hope that what we're working on is going to make your lives a little better, maybe open up some opportunities, and regardless of whether it does that, certainly help you all think about what you want to do and how you want to do it. So let me get started real quick. I wish we had time for everybody to introduce themselves. I want to keep this to an hour. So what I'd like to say is I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna stop at a few points for questions. I'm also gonna hang around at the end. So if you want to ask some other questions or go into more detail on some stuff, I'm around for that. And we can go into greater detail, and we will have opportunities to talk in greater detail over the next many months. But first of all, let me just start by saying welcome, and let me also start by introducing my colleague in all of this. Her name is Heidi Prowitz, and Heidi works in the Study Abroad office, but she has also become an integral part of the new fellowships office, and she is the fellowship program coordinator. And I should introduce, now that everyone knows who I am, my name is Kevin Deacon-Krause. I teach in political science and in honors, and I have been working on and off with fellowship for the last few years, but only in the last 6 months has the university administration decided to make this a priority. And so here we all are. And that gives me the great good fortune to work with Heidi. Heidi, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yes, as Kevin said, I work in the Study Abroad office, mainly working with programs that are led by faculty here at Wayne State. I've been working in Study Abroad for about 12 years. And so I was really excited to help start this office. A lot of the opportunities are, you go abroad with a lot of these opportunities. So it's a little bit of an extension of what I already do. So I'm very excited to get to know those of you who are going to apply and work with you.
And Heidi, you don't even know what awaits you, because these are some pretty remarkable, but just the names I know are remarkable, and I know there's lots of names and faces that I don't know who are just as remarkable. So I'm pretty thrilled at this. So let me just get started by saying that everything we're going to talk about, plus the presentation, plus other stuff, is all going to be on the website that Heidi built, which is at this location. OIP stands for Office of International Programs, at wayne.edu/fellowship. Let me first ask, just in case, does everybody see on their screen a picture of a website with the word Office of Fellowships? Give me a thumbs up if you're seeing that. Thank you. It's always embarrassing when you think you're sharing your screen and you're not. It's even more embarrassing, like the other day when I thought I was only sharing one screen and I was actually sharing the emails I was processing. So I'll try not to do that while I'm talking to all of you. So here's what I want to do. Everything's on the website, so you can go there, but it helps sometimes to have somebody explain it. So that's going to be my job in the next 56 minutes, is to try and work through all of this. And really what I want to talk about is kind of what's there and what opportunities are out there for you. So if you go to this website, what you'll see is actually, it's a huge list of various kinds of fellowships and scholarships, some of which are extremely lucrative. There's a lot of money at stake. Others of which don't have that much money involved, but have training and mentorship. Many of which have kind of prestige and resume builder involved. So this is the kind of stuff, if you're here on this call, if you've been invited to this call, you're the kind of person who can win one of these scholarships. So I want to run through those. I want to talk about what you need to do to apply to get one, why you would apply to get one. I want to go through them specifically so that you can have a sense of what they're about. And then Heidi's going to talk a little bit about the process and the timeline for actually going through this, and then we'll have questions. I'll take some questions. We'll take some questions. So let me just say, the first thing is that the scholarships you'll see on that list, they come in a bunch of different categories, and we've been putting them into 4 different categories. One we're calling open time frame. That just means you can apply for these any time in your college experience. We've kind of divided them up based on when you can apply, figuring that that's the first thing that people want to know, like, when am I eligible for this? And there are actually sort of eligibility periods for some of these. So the open ones I'm going to talk about. Then I'm going to talk about the ones that you apply for in your junior year. I'm going to talk about the ones that you can apply for in your senior year. And then I'm going to talk about a few others that are also in your senior year, but ones that we as an office, while we don't necessarily process the applications, we're going to work with you to help you get those. We're going to do the kind of public relations and the connectivity around those so that people know that those are available. So that's the kind of list. You probably have heard of some of these, like the Rhodes, maybe the Marshall. I know to some of you, I've talked about the Truman or the Udall. You may have heard Fulbright as well. There are a whole bunch of them out there. And our job really in the Office of Fellowships is to help you get ready to apply for these and to help you get them. So what do you need to get one of these? First thing you need to get one of these, actually, we don't need to talk about it, because if you hadn't gotten, if you wouldn't have an invitation to this meeting if you weren't in this category. So we're looking for a high GPA. Not every one of them actually requires a super high GPA, but the group of people we invited to these meetings are people with super high GPAs. So congratulations, first of all. Well done. We're really proud of you, and you've worked really hard. We know that, and you're all really smart. So the good news is, whether you win one of these damn things or not, you got a brain that's gonna move you ahead in the world. The double good news, though, is that having that kind of ability allows you to qualify for some of these things that can help you do even more of what you want to do in life. So you're going to need that, but you already got that. Just keep it up. Second thing, you're going to need strong letters of recommendation. The few of you that I know because you've built relationships with faculty, like you've actually gone out and hung out after class or after Zoom meetings. You've made appointments to see them. You've tried to figure out ways to work with them. You've asked questions. So, if you are the kind of person who builds those relationships with faculty, it's going to help you. That's not why I think most of us do it. We do it because the stuff is interesting. We do it because, we want to learn more about the world. But regardless, doing that kind of thing, building those faculty relationships is a challenge under COVID in particular, but it's doable, and it's really essential. And it's going to be good not only for this, not only to get those letters of recommendation, frankly, but to actually learn about the world. Only a certain fraction of what we do as teachers happens in the classroom. A lot of it happens in those one-on-one interactions with all of you. One of my colleagues talks about college not so much as a classroom experience, but as a cognitive apprenticeship. It's a way that we work one-on-one with individual people to help them develop their own brains and their own processing power in ways similar to or even better than what we've done. And that kind of thing is help when you build those relationships with faculty. So you want to be out there. You want to be starting to get faculty who know you by name, people who you can ask questions to. In one of the earlier sessions we did, people were like, how do you do that? Well, really just staying after or reaching out to the professor saying, could we talk for a few minutes by Zoom these days? I have some questions about the material, or I have questions about how you got to do what you did in life, or anything that's going to build that tie is going to build the basis for a good letter of recommendation. It's also going to build your own capabilities because you're going to be engaging with people who are smart and who've thought about the world. So it's one of those things that it's good to do for its own sake, and it's good to help you get one of these fellowships. Third thing is some kind of indication that you're actually engaged or concerned with the community. Again, the few of you that I know that's actually part of who you are as a person, like it is core to who you are. Most of these scholarships, not all, but most, want to know that you're not just a student, that you're not just someone who's in it for yourself, but that you're in it for the broader society. You've got a kind of bigger picture, and that you've got some evidence that that's the case. I know that's, again, harder during COVID. Things have changed a lot. But anything that indicates to the prospective reviewers from these scholarships that you're somebody who is about bigger things is going to be important. You're also going to need time. And I will be honest on this. I'm going to be honest on the whole thing. But in particular on this, applying for some of these big name scholarships, especially some of the senior ones, while it goes on for a month or two, it's the equivalent of taking a hard class. Like, there is a lot of work that is involved in some of these. And we think it's worth it. We wouldn't be running this office if we didn't think so. But just, I want that to be out there. I want you to know that some of this is going to be hard work. It's going to take a lot of effort to write these essays. You all have written essays. You know what that's like. It's going to take a lot of work to build those faculty relationships. It's going to take a lot of effort to gather all the materials together. And so it's challenging, but it's worth it. So, we can work with you on that. We can help you make the task a little easier, but at a certain level, there's only a certain amount of time saving we can do. It's just going to be a lot of work. And then the last thing that you'll need eventually, not at the beginning necessarily, is knowing who you are and having a sense of what kind of person you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and what you want to do in the world. Those of you who've had conversations with me will know that it doesn't take too long before I'll ask a question like, 30 years from now, what do you wish you have done? Or when they write your obituary, what do you want it to have said? Stuff like that. That's the kind of question that you'll have to be thinking about when you're doing this, because they award these scholarships to people who have a sense of where they're going in life. Doesn't mean that that's where you're necessarily going to go. If you'd asked me when I was a sophomore or a junior, the answer that I would have given is not where I am right now, but at least to have a vision, to know roughly where you're going, allows you to talk about yourself and your plans, and it actually makes it possible for you to make choices later that say, I was going to go here, but I'm going to go there, but I'm going to be conscious about it. So that's what you're going to need to do this. Most of you already have bits and pieces of this, and so that's the good news. What do you get out of this? Why would you bother doing this? Well, the first thing on the bottom actually is this question of scholarships. Like really, there's money out there. Money's a good thing to have when you're trying to go to school. It's expensive enough. Some of these have a lot of prestige involved. Almost all of them will help you build some kind of professional network. And just in general, they make it possible for you to make your brain bigger, for you to understand the world better, especially since, as Heidi pointed out, a lot of these involve studying in other places, which is awesome. It is transformative. And I say it from personal experience. So what you also get, and I'm just starting from the top here, a lot of this it's preparation for applying for grad school. All of you are probably going to, in some way or other, pursue some kind of advanced training or even some kind of advanced job applications and so on. This is the kind of stuff you'll be doing for there. And if you do this right, those letters of recommendation translate over into college recommendations. If you've ever talked to a professor about this, once I've written you a letter of recommendation, it sits on my computer until the next time you come back and ask me, and then I modify it and I update it and talk about what you've done lately, or why you're going, why you're applying to a school or something like that. But once it's in, it's so much easier to ask them to do it again, because the actual burden on the faculty is tiny compared to that initial burden of writing those letters of recommendation. And then, this chance to develop your own analysis and communication skills about yourself, like developing that, being able to write about yourself in a clear way, being able to practice multiple iterations of those essays. It's just good practice. It helps make you a better communicator. And that thing that we said you had to have to start, you don't have to start it, but as long as you've got a willingness to develop it, we can guarantee you that you will come out of this with a clearer vision of who you are and what you want to do. And that, frankly, is the biggest thing that you can come out of this with. A colleague of mine who you'll hear me refer to, who actually used to do this job for the Naval Academy, said, you get a Rhodes, the Rhodes is the bumper sticker. The real prize is actually having thought through your life well enough to get a Rhodes. If you've done that, it really doesn't matter if you get the Rhodes, because you've actually laid the framework for you to develop your life to move forward. So that's what we're about. And frankly, the chance of getting some of these is minuscule. Like, getting a Rhodes, our joke has been, you're more likely to put a blindfold on and throw a dart and hit the center of the dartboard. These are really hard, even for students at elite institutions that those kinds of scholarships often go to. So if it were just about winning, we might not be as enthusiastic about some of these. The thing about these is that the process of applying is where the victory is. The rest is gravy. This is the important part. If you can formulate a vision for yourself where you want to go with this, then you're going to be in a better position to do it, whether you get the damn Rhodes Scholarship or not. There are a couple of others actually that are a lot easier to get. We're going to talk about those. It's in addition to that, it's actually the experience of going, the real chance of winning. So that's the big picture. That's why, why you would want to do this. You'll have to excuse me. I presented this earlier to advisors, and I must not have removed my my annotations. You know what? Nope, I can't remove the annotations. So anyway, annotations are there from before. You see my scribble on this. So my colleague who used to do this for the Naval Academy, when we had him come in and talk to us a few years ago, I'm stealing mercilessly from what he had to say. But he said these scholarships, they're looking for this. They're looking for someone who thinks broadly and deeply about themselves and the world. And he actually had 5 different categories, things he said that they look for. And these are going to seem a little bit contradictory. Sometimes they want you to be a lot of different things, but I suspect a lot of you have a lot of these things. And if you don't, you can probably develop a lot of these things. So the first one he says is depth. And his litmus test for this is, can you go into a conversation with an expert in the thing that you want to do in life and have an intelligent conversation? You don't have to be the answer provider. You don't have to be the one who is going to tell them how it is, quite the opposite. But can you go in, can you ask the right questions? Do you know enough about it to keep that conversation going? So if you're really into public health, can you talk to a public health specialist about issues in public health? Can you ask the right questions? Can you leave that conversation with them thinking, hey, that person is an up-and-coming potential public health specialist? And whether that's public health or whether it's one of the sciences or whether it's politics, whatever it is, the ability to actually do that. And the key, he said, is because what that does is it shows you're intellectually curious. It shows that you've thought about this, that you've tried to incorporate this into your brain, and that rather than just reciting facts, you can actually engage in a conversation with someone who knows their stuff. Second thing, actually, he talking about in terms of breadth, which seems contradictory to depth, right? It's spreading yourself thinner. But here he said, they want to see someone with depth, but they don't want that depth to be have a monopoly on who you are. They want you to be able to actually talk about the world as a whole. He says they know you're going to come from Detroit. They know you're from Michigan. They're going to want you to be able to talk about what's going on in Detroit these days, what's going on in Michigan these days. And his litmus test for this is, could they grab a New York Times at random and say, what do you think about this story on page 1? And to see if you could talk intelligently about that. It doesn't mean you have to study up on it, but could you have intelligent things to say about the world in which you live, about the city in which you live? I suspect that's true of most of you, but that is one of the things that they're looking for. They also, most of them are looking for leadership. And he said that actually has 2 elements. The first is, have you given evidence of your leadership? Like, have you been in charge of things? Have you been in charge of clubs or study teams or parts of labs? So have you given actual evidence? But it's more than just holding those positions. Lots of people, and I'm sure you had friends like this, who are like, I gotta be president of this high school chess club so I can get into college, right? You ask me. They're not interested in that. They're interested in, when you were a leader, did you do stuff? Can you talk about your leadership experience? And do you have what they call a leadership vision? Like knowing how to lead people, knowing what your skills are at leading, actually where you're not so good at leading, so where you fall down, how to improve that, and then what do you do with that leadership? So how do you use your skills, your ability, your vision for what it means to be a leader to actually make things happen, to make the world a better place? So I suspect, again, most of you have that. But when they're not looking for the empty titles, they're looking for actual evidence and narrative about achievement. And often that's done without any titles at all, but the person is actually just doing the job. Fourth thing, they're looking for some degree of compassion. This can't just be about you. It can't just be about your own advancement. They're looking for people who are able to talk in convincing ways about the world as a whole, about the bigger picture. And if people can sort of, they can try and fake compassion. It's actually a pretty hard thing to fake. They will know whether you're in this for yourself or not. Most of you are in this not only for yourself, but for the bigger picture. It doesn't mean you have to submerge yourself to the bigger goals, but is there something out there that is worth doing that's bigger than you? They want to know that you know that and that you're focused on that. And then the last thing, and I've mentioned this before, is vision. Like, do you have a sense of who you are, who you want to be, how the things that you want to do, especially the scholarships you're applying for, fit into that model, and how those things relate to the other questions of compassion and leadership? How do you actually go out and get things done in this regard? So this is the big picture. If that sounds like you, then great. If it doesn't sound like you, my guess is that many of you are actually kind of have habituated to underestimating what you are or what other people would say about you. So if you doubt whether you're that person, ask some people you trust whether they think you're that person. If they say no, you still have time, most of you, to become that person. So, we can work this in a variety of ways. But that's the big picture. If you feel comfortable with that, if you've got those things, then stay on the line. If you don't, you don't have to actually log out, because then we'll know, like, oh, your name disappeared, you don't think. But you can just go, get yourself a sandwich, get yourself a Coke or something, and you don't have to listen to the rest. But most of you, I suspect, can see yourself in this place. That's our job, is helping you see yourself in one of these. And what kind of things are you going to see yourself in? That's what I actually want to talk about next. So I'm going to go through that basic framework of those various scholarships, starting with the open ones, and then working all the way up to the senior and graduate school one. And actually, I want to start by asking Heidi, who's done a lot more work on these first three, to talk about them. So starting with the Boren Award.
Sure. The next three that I will be talking about are they're scholarships, fellowships sponsored by the State Department, and they are also for undergraduate study. So you can apply for them basically after your first semester in college. So they are study abroad focused. The first one is the Boren Scholarship. You may have heard it. It's probably the most prestigious of the three that I'm talking about right here. It funds a full semester to a full year of study abroad. You can see up to $25,000. So it's a large chunk of money for a year-long study abroad option. This one, you have to be studying a critical language. There are over 60 languages that are considered to be critical on the Boren list of languages. So, a lot of them are ones that you won't find commonly taught at universities. So you don't need to have background language skills. So if this sounds like you, if you're interested in learning a language that is not found here at Wayne State, this could be a good option for you. For options real quickly, Bulgarian, Hindi, Mandarin, and Russian are all on that list. The big thing about this one is after you finish your college, after you graduate, you have to commit to applying for and attempting to get a job in the federal government for, I think, it's anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So it's not a huge time commitment, but that does, get you a foot in if you are interested in public service and government. It does put you at the top of the list for, some of those entry-level jobs to get yourself in. Yeah, on to the next slide. Talk about the Critical Language Scholarship, or CLS. This is a summer program. It is about 10 weeks long. There are only 15 languages on this critical language. So you can see some of the ones that are written up there: Korean, Indonesian, Azerbaijani, Russian, Turkish, Punjabi, Urdu, things like that. So ones that are, very rarely found on college campuses these days. So if you are interested in one of those languages, again, it's 10 weeks over the summer. You go to one of the sites that CLS has set up. They have sites all around the world. It is an immersive experience. I believe you have to sign a contract that says you will not speak English for those 10 weeks, but it is fully funded. So they pay for your airfare, they pay for your accommodations, I believe even your food and your instruction. So really great experience for people who want to learn these languages. We did have 2 students earn this scholarship last year. They weren't able to go abroad because of COVID, but one of them, I think, deferred, and one did an online experience. But other students I've talked to, you go from barely knowing a language to being very, almost fluent, if not fluent, in 10 weeks. So yeah, it's a really good experience. Going to the next slide, the Benjamin Gilman International Scholarship. This is for students who are Pell Grant eligible students. So if you receive the Pell Grant, or if you can receive it, you can apply for this. Again, it's for study abroad, so you get up to $5,000 for a semester to go abroad. This is, its aims is to help students who are historically underrepresented in education abroad to have that study abroad experience. So you don't have to be studying a language, but they definitely prefer students who do study languages. And it does have to be a credit bearing experience as well. The shortest time you can go abroad to get this scholarship is 21 days. So a 3-week summer experience is fine, or you can go up to a year. But I do think about 5,000 is the cap for it.
Great. Yeah, and like as Heidi said, this is a nice area where actually her previous experience, and she has over a decade of experience in study abroad work, where the study abroad work and the fellowship work combined. I talked about some of these being really difficult to get. These are not in that category. These are easily doable. I mean, everyone on this call, I think, would have a really good, 1 in 2, 1 in 3, 1 in 1.5 shot at getting one of these. And so, when I talk about some of these being hard, these do not have incredibly hard applications. They're smaller stakes, but they are really good for getting that kind of foreign experience. And again, I will say, if you haven't had that kind of experience, and not just, like going to see the Eiffel Tower, but living in a culture, living in the language in that culture, it changes you, and it changes you in all the best ways. So if you have any chance of doing that, and these will help, we will help you get that, because it's absolutely one of the most important things we could possibly do. Then after this, there are some in a rather different kind of category, some that are just a little bit more overwhelming, a little bit more inclusive. And these are ones that you would apply for in your junior year. But you're probably wondering, especially because this is Wayne, am I a junior? Am I a sophomore? Am I a senior? Like, what the hell does that actually mean anymore if I'm not going to go through a thing? We've got students who come in with so many AP credits, and it's some of you, I know. So many AP credits that you come in like after your senior year of college, like you're just full of credits. Other people take it slow, and for family reasons or economic reasons take fewer credits. So what does this actually mean? It really actually kind of depends on when you plan to graduate. So if for a senior, you're a senior if the academic year that you're in right now is your last one. And you're a junior if it's the one before that. So just to give you a sense, so for all of you out there, you can think of yourself as graduating at a particular time. So these are, sort of when you would sort of think about graduating, when you might be able to graduate. We've got some August graduations that people do. That was a little iffy. So we'd want to talk to you specifically if you're graduating and planning to graduate in August, whether you'd be considered a junior or senior or so on. We can actually pull that out. And then we can actually sort of rearrange these to look a little bit like this. So, in the current situation, if you're graduating this May, then you're actually after the deadline for the scholarships that apply to seniors. But every one of those scholarships you can actually apply to after your senior year, so no fear. If you're planning to graduate in May of 2022 or December 2021, we tend to consider you a senior. If you're planning to graduate in May of 2023 or December 2022, we'd consider you a junior, so you'd be eligible for the ones I'm about to talk about. And if you're going to graduate after that, then you can just sort of use the years scale here to figure out kind of when that is. And I know we've got some first-year students, we've got some second-year students, and so on. So this is kind of the basic idea. So you want to think about, when you're going to graduate and what that's going to mean for the particular scholarship that we're going to talk about. The scholarships that I'm going to talk about, the Boren, CELS, and the Gilman, you can do those anytime. So even if you're in those earlier categories, you can apply for those as long as you're already at the university. The ones I'm going to talk about now, the Truman, the Goldwater, and Udall are only for juniors. They actually have a very narrow window. So people who are just more than a year from graduating, but not more than 2 years from graduating. And then the Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell, and so on, those are for people who are going to graduate this year or are going to graduate in the sort of May of next year. So that's what we're looking at. What do those junior scholarships look like? Well, the first of these, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart because it's related to public service and government, which is my field, is the Truman Scholarship. The Truman Scholarship was created to honor Harry Truman. He didn't want a monument built in his memory. He wanted a scholarship built in his memory. So the the Congress endowed a scholarship that continues to this day. And it provides a $30,000 grant, $10,000 a year for your senior year of college, and for your 2 years of graduate school. But more than the money, it provides a lot of mentorships and connections. They get all of the Truman Scholars, about 60 of them, who are some of the most impressive people you'll ever meet, people like you. They bring them together in Washington. They also bring them together actually at the Harry Truman Memorial Library, the Presidential Library in Kansas City. So they get to know one another. They build the kinds of connections that last for a long time. And they help you find internships. And they have a really strong alumni network and great resume builder. So these are the kinds of things that you want to think about. It's a pretty extensive application. You not only provide a personal statement, but you've got to actually propose a policy that will would change, would make something better. You've got 800 words to describe a policy, all the way from why we need it to what it's going to look like to how it's going to be paid for and so on. And so it's pretty policy focused, it's government focused. In exchange for this, you have to commit to engaging in public service. Now, that doesn't mean just in government. It can mean more broadly in the nonprofit sector, in education. But they're not looking for people who are going to go into business or who are going to become sort of line doctors or stockbrokers or personal injury lawyers. It's really people who are committed to broader kind of public service. The application deadline for this is February 2nd. So, according to Wayne's internal process, those of you who might be considered juniors are already passed on this. I'm sorry we didn't have this infrastructure up and running sooner. But if you are in that junior category starting next year, then you will be eligible for this. And we have a pretty long process. So we'll talk about this, and Heidi will go through the dates. But sometime, if you're going to be a junior starting next year, then you're going to apply for this in the beginning of your junior year at Wayne, and then we'll have an internal process that'll get you ready to apply for this by February. Pretty high grade point requirements on this. They say a 3.3, but in practice, it's hard to get one of these without a 3.7 or a 3.8. You got to have three really great letters, one from somebody who knows your academic ability, one from somebody who knows your leadership ability, and one from somebody who knows your commitment to public service or the public good. So this is a big one, and we really hope that a bunch of people apply for it. We get to send 3 forward to Truman. We've never had more than 3 apply to Wayne, so we're looking actually forward to a situation where a whole bunch of people apply to us, and we're able to sort of go through that, find the 3 best candidates, and send those forward. Second one, also quite prestigious, is the Goldwater Fellowship. If the Truman is about public service, the Goldwater is really about hardcore STEM, hardcore science. And so this is for the kind of people who, again, are super smart, have great grades, but also work in labs, who have an experience in doing active research. They're the kind of people who sometimes get included on papers, the list of authors and papers. People who've been really deeply involved in specific science that they're working on, and this will fund you to continue in that research. Again, it's a junior year proposal, and it's in the January of your junior year that you apply, but the Wayne process will have you beginning earlier in September and October. And then the third one is a little bit less known, but it actually is quite similar to the other two, especially to the Truman, and that's the Udall Scholarship. The Udall family holds in its ranks a number of U.S. senators and representatives, a former presidential candidate, and that family, in whose honor this is, has a real concern about environment and Native American questions. So this is for people, it's like the Truman, but for people who want to focus their policy efforts specifically on the environment or on Native American questions. It also brings people together. It's a much smaller cohort, but it's also, there are a lot fewer people apply because it's more narrow, more targeted. But it provides a certain amount of money for your senior year in graduate school, but it also gets you together with the other graduates and helps you build those networks of connections and mentorship. So those are 3. Those all have fairly substantial recommendation and essay requirements. They're all also fairly difficult to get, but the rewards are huge for those. And then there are a few in the senior year. that you probably have heard of, actually. So, you know, the big name on this is the Rhodes Scholarship. Most of you probably heard about Rhodes Scholarship. This is a scholarship created by Cecil Rhodes, who is famous for behaving incredibly badly in British colonies in Africa. And this was a way for him to sort of launder some of that money into what he saw as a good cause. And so he made available scholarships at Oxford, which have become a big deal. So this scholarship is for 2 to 3 years in a master's degree or 2 master's degree programs at Oxford University in the United Kingdom. You can apply for this as a senior or as a recent graduate. You can apply to this until you're age 24. So if you don't apply right away, you still have, many of you would still have a couple of years. The requirements on this and the next couple that I'm going to talk about are really high. You know, they're looking for a 3.9 or above. My colleague who does this said it's possible to get one of these with less than a 3.9, but if you have less than a 3.9, you better have done some kind of humanitarian work in the world that when people hear you talk about it, they'll start to cry. You know, it's a really kind of big deal scholarship, but it's not unwinnable, and it's not unwinnable for the kinds of students who I'm looking at right now. Like you all, the ones of you that I know, you're not out of the league on this. You can do this kind of stuff. It's just a hard one. You got to have multiple letters of recommendation. The Rhodes allows as many as 8, and it's very hard to win this with any less than 6 or 7. Got to have those very high grades. You got to have some strong evidence of what you want to do in the world, some strong evidence that you're capable of doing it. You got to go through and very carefully pick the exact right Rhodes program for you and show how that's integrated into your life. And you got to apply for this at the beginning of your senior year, which means you got to really start working on it in the middle of your junior year. And so we have a process at Wayne. We'll want you to apply for this with us in the end part of your junior year so that you're ready by the time that early senior deadline comes around. There is another scholarship out in this field. It's called the Marshall Scholarship. And the Marshall actually does almost all the things that the Rhodes does. But the Marshall allows you to go to any university in the United Kingdom. So London School of Economics or the University of Edinburgh or a whole variety, King's College. And so you can apply to go to a variety of institutions. It's the same thing, 2 to 3 years, 1 to 2 master's programs. Again, very high GPA requirements. In some ways, the Marshall is for very serious people. You know, there is a kind of joke among the Marshalls that, you know, the Rhodes Scholars get all the glory, you know, and there are a lot of famous Rhodes Scholars out there. So, you know, just to name 2, if you can think of the last presidential campaign in the U.S., both Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg were Rhodes Scholars. Marshall Scholars tend not to be the kind of stick out your hand and shake people's hands politicians type, but the kind who actually are very serious and get things done. Again, that fits a lot of you that I see on this call. So hard to get, but not impossible, really worthwhile if you can get it. And the kinds of alumni networks and mentoring that it sets up are really, you know, fundamental for building a life, for building a career. And with all of these, the application process, the ability to formulate who you want to be and how you want to be that person is actually the win here. So, you know, if you get the Marshall bumper sticker is great, but actually just getting ready for it is a huge plus as well. There are a couple of others that are very similar but are less known. One of these is the George Mitchell Scholarship. This was set up to honor U.S. Senator George Mitchell, who helped advance the peace process in Northern Ireland. This is a much smaller one, but it gets you abroad. It's like the Rhodes and Marshall, except in this case, it's institutions on the island of Ireland. So both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, you know, either one. And again, it sort of fits that same framework. It also has a little bit higher upper age limit, so you can apply until you're 29. And you know, hard to get, but a little bit easier to get than the Rhodes and Marshall, just because it's less known. Then the last one in this kind of core category for us is the Gates. The Gates was set up by Bill Gates, who probably doesn't have quite as much bad behavior to apologize for as Cecil Rhodes, but you know, it's still an effort by him to kind of legitimate some of his earnings. And so he set it up for Cambridge what Rhodes had done for Oxford. If this one has a reputation, it's much more science STEM oriented. And so if that's your field, that's your area, you may have some advantages in this particular regard. Same early October deadline, same kind of requirement for seniors and recent graduates. And interestingly, in this case, you don't have to be a citizen of the United States. You can actually be a citizen of any country other than the United Kingdom. So those are the big ticket ones, the big name ones with which we've had some experience over the last couple of years. We've had 3 Rhodes Scholar applicants. We've had 2 Marshall applicants. We've had 1 Mitchell applicant. No Gates yet, but we hope that's going to come. Haven't won one yet, but eventually that's going to happen. And I hope it's one of you or more than one of you. There are a couple of others that we are just sort of starting to introduce in our rotations. And I will be frank, we don't know a lot about these. But we are willing to learn. And if you are interested in them and want to help us do the legwork, we're interested in helping you apply for them. So one of these is the Schwarzman, which sort of bills itself as a Rhodes Scholarship for China. So it's got the same basic principles, you know, that age eligibility, that early September, October deadline. But this one is a master's degree program at Tsinghua University in Beijing. And it can give you some of those same experiences, but not in England, in China. We'd like to know more, and if you're interested, we'll help you figure that out. And then there are 2 others that are quite different, but we want to include them. And these actually are like the ones we talked about, critical language and Boren. These are scholarships that are set up to help encourage people to want to and to be able to get involved in the foreign service and public diplomacy in the United States. So really to recruit people who would be willing to work in the foreign service or foreign service related communities, and in particular for populations that are underrepresented in those particular kinds of institutions like the State Department and USAID. So in particular, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women, sort of they look to target this scholarship toward those groups that are underrepresented. There's no formal limit, but the goal of these scholarships is to work with those who just there aren't enough of in our foreign service establishment. And so these provide some really powerful tools: internships, mentoring, graduate degrees. And we really hope that people are interested in applying for those. I've talked to a bunch of you, and I know people are interested in being in the Foreign Service. They're interested in working in international NGOs and things like the U.S. Agency for International Development. These will help you do that, and they'll give you a leg up. You have to promise in return to work in those programs if you're accepted, but it's certainly worth the ability to do that. So the Wrangle is specifically geared toward foreign service. And then there's something called the Payne International Development Fellowship, which is foreign service or the Agency for International Development. And again, these provide mentorship, they provide graduate study, they provide professional development activities. So, if you're in one of those targeted groups and this is appealing to you, we're going to work with you to try and figure out how to make this happen, because these are really cool. Last thing I want to mention. There are a couple of other scholarships that we don't run out of the Office of Fellowships, but that are available at the university, run out of different places, and we really want to encourage you to think about them. They're some of the best that are on here. One of these is pretty simple and small one. It's the Carnegie Endowment's Gaither Fellows Program. So it's a year working in Washington, D.C. with the Carnegie Foundation, working on questions of diplomacy. You can see lists there like cyber policy, international affairs, and so on. So basically it's a year-long job, research job with the Carnegie Endowment. And this is actually run by my colleague Brad Roth in the Political Science Department. Some of you may know him, but we're looking every year for applicants. We almost always get someone to apply. We're still waiting to win one of these, but we think we can do it. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, and if you're a senior, this is something that we really think you should look into. And then the big name here is the Fulbright. Fulbright is a big name, and Fulbright and Rhodes and some of these others are often associated together. Fulbright's actually rather different. It's different for a couple of reasons. The first reason it's different is that it is around specific research-oriented questions. Fulbright also has a Teach English branch, which we encourage you to apply for as well. But either teaching English or researching a specific question abroad, that's what the Fulbright is about. So you have to be able to do a Fulbright, to pose a question that you could go abroad and do research about, and to come back to the United States and disseminate those findings. And in the past few years, I've sat on some Fulbright screening committees, and we've had people, want to study the challenges to women entrepreneurs in Hungary, to study the skills that the Slovenians have developed in beekeeping culture that keeps bee colonies alive. People who want to study the tendency of young Bulgarians to move back to their original village. And they want to do this by survey methods or interviews or other, various kinds of methods in various kinds of fields. So you have a specific question, something you want to learn about, something you want to get good at, you can go to that country, you can work in the language if you need it to be in that language, and then you can come back and kind of disseminate those results. And these are winnable. So unlike some of the others where it's really a long shot, I've seen we can get these for countries like Britain and France that people really want to go to because they're, they want to sightsee and they're famous countries. It's the ratios are pretty low, like 1 in 30 or 1 in 40. But for countries, frankly, that are interesting, for countries that people don't always think about, the ratios are 1 in 3, 1 in 5. These are really gettable. And we can help you increase those odds. So if you want to go to Slovakia or Uruguay, or Sri Lanka, these are possible to get. And all you really need is the ability to do research in a foreign country, something that every one of you can or will be able to do. And where necessary, in most cases it's necessary, the language to do that. And almost everybody at Wayne has some kind of language background. And so, if you've got those two things, we can help you get this. This is something you can apply for as a senior or really any time in your life. I've seen people apply in their 40s and 50s to get these, sometimes winning them. But for most people, it's going to be something you apply for in your senior year to go abroad the year after, or in sort of subsequent years. So it's got that early deadline. And Heidi will talk a little bit about what that means in practice. So that's the list. That's the ones that we serve. Heidi's going to talk to you a little bit about what it would look like to actually apply for these. So I'm going to hand it over to her.
Sure. So on this slide, we have a visualized timeline of the process for those who need to turn in their application during their junior year. So this is the Truman, Goldwater, and Udall. So if you look at it kind of like a map, now at the info session, that's where we are right now. So if you are a sophomore, this is you. So from here until late September is when you would work on your application and submit a rough draft in late September to our office. For those that we can only send a few applications on to the scholarship entity, mid-October is when we would make the decision of who is going to be the Wayne State representative for that. And then from mid-October to mid-December is when we help you hone that application. You get those final drafts ready, you get your recommendations set, and then you turn it in mid-December, just before the scholarship submission in late January. So that is the general timeline for junior applications. And then if we go to senior year applications, so again, now you are a junior or a senior, and then you work on your application, your rough draft application through late March. In mid-April is when that decision is made if you are a Wayne State delegate for this application. And then from mid-April to mid-September is when you're working on honing the application. We're working with you, revising your essays. And then that is until the internal submission deadline of mid-September. And then early October is the external scholarship submission date. So again, this is for applications due during your senior year or after graduation. The one that is a little bit different off the regular track is the Fulbright application. So you would apply for this in your senior year or after graduation. But throughout the summer here from now until early September is when you work on your application materials. So you work on getting those letters of recommendation, you work on your essays. And if you're doing the research and study track, you need to receive an invitation letter from the host university of which you'll be studying at. So that can take quite a bit of time. So that's what you'll be working on throughout the summer. And then early September is the internal deadline. You have a short window of revision and work, and then the scholarship submission is in early October. So not so much time dedicated to the revision, but you have a lot of time to work on the necessary application materials. So we split the application process into 3 different segments, 3 different phases. The first one is from now until the internal deadline. So that's before the application. After the decision is made, if you are one of the Wayne State applicants for the scholarship, that's what we call the during application up until that internal submission. And then after that time is what we consider to be the after application. In the next slide, we'll talk about what are the services that we offer during each of those phases. So beforehand, some of the work we've already done, so we track and we post those major fellowships on our website. We update the deadlines to be current. If there is a, you might find if you check back in a couple months, there might be a new fellowship that's available. This is something that will be changing and we'll be adding more as students are interested in applying to them. So that's something to keep an eye on. We'll advise and inform students. So we'll hold these info sessions. We'll send out emails like many of you probably received on fellowship opportunities, on deadlines coming up, on new opportunities. So make sure that you're checking your email for things from the fellowships office. And then we'll answer questions regarding fellowships, their applications, the process, eligibility. So during the application, so after you turn in those rough drafts and after the decision is made, if you're going to be an applicant from Wayne State, we will support you throughout this process. So writing essays will help guide you in that process, will help you figure out how to secure strong letters of recommendation. And then we'll help you gather and send all the necessary materials. So if you need that letter of invitation, we can help guide you in that process as well. And then of course we screen students if the number is limited of how many we can send on from Wayne State. So after the application, once you've turned in your final draft of all of the materials, we'll help you coordinate those last minute recommendations that are still coming in. If you need an endorsement letter from Wayne State, we can help coordinate that. And then we can also help with the essay revisions and reviews if you're allowed that. Not every fellowship will allow for outside essay review and revisions. And then if you are selected after the application round, if you're selected to go on to the next round with the scholarship, we will help you practice for those interviews by assembling faculty panels so that hopefully you are prepared and confident in your interview skills. So after...
Oh, sorry. Nope, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No worries.
Oh.
So going on to the next steps, after this info session here, what we want you to do is go through our website. So if you go to the website listed there at the top, and we'll put that in the chat as well. If you go there, look at all of the fellowships that we've talked today, look at which ones you're interested in, which ones you think you're eligible for. After you kind of narrow it down to a couple, or maybe you honed in on one, fill out the pre-application form. This button is at the bottom of that page with all of the fellowship information on it. So fill that out. It will ask you a few questions. It'll ask you to upload a resume and a CV, ask you to upload a few things, a personal statement. These don't have to be really edited and revised. We want rough drafts. And then also a research statement, and ask you who you think will recommend you for these opportunities. And then the next slide shows just the first question that we ask on that pre-application form. We ask, are you a US citizen? So if you select yes, you'll go on to tell us all of that information that I just mentioned. And if you say no, we'll ask a few other questions because the pool of fellowships that you're eligible for does narrow a little bit, but there still are opportunities for you. So we just ask that right away so that we know which ones you'll be eligible for. And then after you turn in that, that form electronically, someone from our office will be in touch with you about next steps. And that is kind of the jumping off point of where you enter the before application, before the internal decision date.
All right. So a lot of information dumped on you in a actually long amount of time. But those of you whose cameras are still on appear to be still awake. So are there any questions from all of you?
I had a quick question.
Yes.
I noticed that there were age limits on some of them. So I'm a senior, but I'm also 26. Does that mean that I can't qualify for some of them?
No, I believe not. It's going to depend on which ones.
Okay.
I think for most of them, it is about your the years since graduation. The roads actually, I think, is pretty unpleasant about this, like they are about some other things. So I think it may be a 24-year-old age limit. But you know, many of the others, I think are looking for people in their senior year or graduate. We'd have to check on individual ones if you're interested. But certainly, you know, the Fulbright, the Gates. I'm not so sure about the Marshall. But most of the, you know, the ones that have any sense in their heads are going to allow people, they're going to accept that people follow different paths in life. So I'm pretty sure the roads would be a no, but I think most of the others would be a yes. You can actually go to individual ones. If you go to our website, you can go to the individual. We have links to all of them, and you can actually go click on them yourself and just do a little digging and see. And actually, if you would report back to us, there are others in that exact situation. We haven't thought about this exactly, or I hadn't. I think Heidi had, but we hadn't sort of made an explicit mention of that. So if you find anything out, would you let us know?
Yes.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Other questions?
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One is regarding the Truman Scholarship. I know that it said that it funded graduate school. Is that exclusive to master's programs, or are law school programs included in that as well?
They will fund law school, but you do, you are going to have to, if you're going to do that, you are going to have to make it very clear that the law that you're pursuing is going to be public interest law. They have been, I've talked to them about this. They've been sort of burned in the past. They've actually gone back to people, you know, who've gone to law school and taken big firm jobs, and they've actually asked for their money back.
Really?
For those, yeah. So they really are they're very clear that they want, I mean, you know, obviously the legal profession is an important one for public service, but if you do that, the challenge is going to be explaining how you're going to use the law degree to do that as opposed to something else.
Okay.
You know, and a law degree is no longer the kind of Swiss Army knife of, you know, getting things done in politics the way it used to. So you may want to also think about, and just you personally may want to think about something like a, you know, a JD and Master in Public Policy or Master in Public Administration. I think that's going to be more persuasive to them because it's going to show them that you have that broader thing, and it's going to be good for you, period. So yes, that's
okay.
we will work with you on that, but that's the only caveat.
Perfect. And then for the other one was regarding the UDAL. It was kind of answered by the other one in terms of like, never mind. For the UDAL one, I know that it said that it included environmental studies as well. Was that also for people who are going into environmental law, or is that just for master's programs?
I don't know that. My suspicion is that the UDAL would actually cover a program if you were able to make a persuasive case about environmental law. We'll have to check on that. But my guess would be that the UDAL would cover environmental law.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
I do have one question,
Yes.
actually. So my minor is German. So about the Boren scholarship,
Yeah.
would that, so if I wanted to do like the Wayne State like junior year like in Bavaria program, would that pay for that? Like, would that apply to that, or would that be like an independent type of thing? Does that make sense?
Heidi, do
Yeah.
you have a sense?
If German is on the list of languages, then yes. I haven't memorized the list. My guess is that it might be, but check the list. The link is on our fellowship's website. But yes, you can, you have to write about the program that you're applying for in the scholarship. But yeah, if you're studying language, it should be qualified.
Thank you.
I will look while we're talking. German may be one of those languages that is so widely taught that it's not actually included there. If you're eligible for a Pell Grant, I think the Gilman would cover that. I'm almost sure about that. But I think the Boren. Let me check on that while we're. Well, let me check on it after we can go into more
Thank
detail.
you so much.
It's a great question. Sure. Any other questions?
I had one.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at applying for a program that would be next year, so like I'm interested in the critical languages scholarship, would you still recommend like applying for it? I mean, given like the COVID situation, I'm not sure if you can like give a recommendation on like what'll happen, but what would you say is like the best thing to do? Would you still say to apply or maybe hold off?
Yeah, I want to say apply, but I also want to, before I give you that specific advice, I want to check that you can defer it, because if you aren't interested in, pivoting and doing an online experience, if you actually want to do the travel, it might be better to wait a year. I know out of the Gilman and the CLS, one of them allowed you to defer, and I think that was CLS, but I'd have to verify that it actually is CLS. So I'm going to write down your name, and I will email you if I don't find the answer by the end. But
Okay,
yeah,
thank you very much.
the summer isn't looking great for study abroad if you are thinking about one of either the Gilman or the CLS.
Summer 2022.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking of. Gotcha.
Okay, yeah. 2021, I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, and I think like
2022 is.
Yeah, that's what I was
okay,
looking at. 22.
I would say that's pretty safe to go ahead and apply for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I don't know if Ivy's in the room still. Ivy, I looked it up, and the Boren does not include Germany. So they're really looking for languages that Americans don't study enough. Americans don't study any language enough, but they've got a sort of specific list, it looks like, and I cannot see them on a list of preferred countries for that. So sorry about that. There may be some other opportunities, but not that one. Or instead of going to Munich, you could go to Kazakhstan or 60 other countries that they have on the list. That was a joke, but not actually fully a joke, because it would be very cool. Anybody else?
How competitive is the Marshall Scholarship and the Bill Gates Scholarship in comparison to Rhodes?
Not quite, but super competitive. Like, if the Rhodes is 1 in 300, the Marshall's 1 in 250, and the Gates is 1 in 200. These are not things like, they're not the sort of thing where you would want to say, yep, that's what I'm doing next year. They are like, maybe someone will, maybe I'll win a small lot, maybe I'll win a scratch off lottery or something like that. Like, it would be fun if it happened. And the only reason we actually sort of pursue these is that the process of applying is good for you. But in terms of getting them, it's hard. It's hard.
Also about the Gates, it said that you need a high GPA. What do you suggest would be a good GPA? And also, it said you have to have interest in research. Do you need to have previous research publications or just an interest in research?
So Nora, they're looking at 3.9 or above, really. I mean, I think that's the kind of practical, the sort of rule of thumb. It's possible to go lower, but the rule of thumb for these is, nearly perfect, like nearly all A's. They would like to see, I suspect, some evidence that you have done research. I don't know that you have to have your name on a paper that's been published, but I would suspect that a huge percentage of the people who are applying for those actually do. So, you know, that's kind of, that's their, you know, that's what they're looking for in specific.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
We have a question in the chat box. Do social sciences count for STEM scholarships?
I just applied to Erin on that individually, but
okay.
it's a great question to deal with generally. No, it's a great question to deal with generally. The Goldwater distinctly does not. So the Goldwater is really very much about the hard sciences. I told the previous group that, you know, the Goldwater was created to honor Barry Goldwater, who was a staunch anti-communist, and what he was really interested in was producing lots of American scientists who could fight the communists. And, you know, get satellites up in orbit to counter Sputnik. So that is very much like a hard science kind of thing. The Gates is STEM inclined, but it's not only STEM. And I think there the social sciences would be, you know, possible. It's just that they're less likely than, you know, for the sciences. Anything else?
I had a quick question about the timelines. This might have been obvious, but I'm a junior, and so for the seniors scholarships,
Yep.
would that timeline be would I follow that timeline when I'm a senior, or would I follow that now as a junior for senior?
You know what, Madeline, the fact that it wasn't obvious means that I need to go back and redo my timeline. So it actually starts now for you. So the idea would be if you are a junior right now, you will be applying to us in your junior year so that we can get you ready so that you can work on it over the summer. You know, we can say, okay, you're going to be one of the ones we'll send. You would get ready over the summer to get this thing done, and then you would apply very early in your senior year. The thing about it is, we don't need necessarily all that amount of time, but because of the nature of summer, you know, when you get back, it's too short a time when you get back in your senior year to get this up and running. So we want to get people on the track before they leave for the summer so they can get it, especially if they're going abroad or doing other stuff.
Okay, thank you.
I'll work on explaining that for future groups. So thanks for bringing that to my attention.
This is similar, except for I'm a sophomore, just regarding the time.
Yep.
I was interested in the Truman. Is it too, and again, I'm a sophomore, is it too late, or would I start prepping now?
You're fine. So
Okay.
what makes this all confusing is that the junior scholarships are mid-year or mid-academic year applications. So I need to just figure out how to express this clearly. To get a Truman, if you are a sophomore now, you sort of think about it, you know, deal with us. You apply to us next September to say, I want to send my my Truman in the next January, right? So you have 1 year. We have one Truman right now. She started working with us this September, and so her application will go off this week to the Truman. So you are totally on track for a Truman. It's exactly where you want to be. So if you're a sophomore right now, you're eligible for the Truman next year. It's just that you would want to be in touch with us to apply for your Wayne nod in September, October, so that we can, you know, make sure that we're not sending too many people and we can help you prepare.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question.
Go for it.
I think it's pertaining to Truman, but it was something about the public service one, and if you're going into law, make it clear that your law isn't like privatized. So would corporate fall into public service, or is that
Nope.
more like private?
Not really. It's too much of a risk for them. You know, when people go and get corporate law degrees, very few of those people who go get corporate law degrees go become corporate regulators. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but they're going to be very, very dubious about someone who wants to do corporate law.
Okay, and then I have another question.
Yeah.
So, I'm technically a sophomore now, but I'm in the Law Start program, which I could technically take cut my graduation year by like a year, so I kind of graduate next winter, but not really, because then if I get into law school. So am I still considered a sophomore and still can like apply now, or how's that?
You know, that's a tough one. We would have to talk to them about that because you are in one of those accelerated programs. If you weren't in Law Start, when would you graduate?
May 2023.
then I think you're going to be fine.
Okay.
How many semesters have you put in already?
That I'm going on my 4 or
Or
5th.
yeah, you should be fine.
Okay.
Just like Laura, you're in your 4th semester right now, I think.
Not
Yeah.
counting summer, or
Not counting, yeah, you're fine, not counting summer.
okay.
Yeah, you've been at the university for 2 years. You know, they're not gonna even necessarily know when you'd be graduating, so you would be fine for that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Which scholarships have you gotten?
Laura, that's not nice. So I've had I got the Truman when it was easy. So all of you are better students than I was. All of you are smarter than I am. So I got it back when it wasn't that hard to get. And back actually when they didn't have all the cool alumni stuff. So it was just, they handed out some checks. And then I have gotten the Fulbright. And that one, you know, I don't feel bad about, because that was actually the result of really hard work, of graduate work, you know, trying to study a foreign country and getting deeply immersed in that country. You know, those are the two that I've had. Any questions? Well, as we often say, we've bored you into submission. Morgan, that looked like a question. Was that? You looked like you were about to speak, but maybe not. Okay.
No, thank you so much though for all this information. It's really great.
Absolutely. I really hope that you all think about this, and we're going to do our best this year to help. The big picture, I really hope that you all have a chance, just the leisure and the space to think about who you want to be, how you want to be that person. The whole point for us doing this is to help you with that process. And if we win some of these in the process, that's great. But really, you know, the ability to do this. And, you know, Nora, one of the things that actually happened, you know, when I was applying for these things, they helped me figure out where I wanted to go. They helped me figure out what kind of person I was. They helped me figure out what I wanted to do with my life. They helped me realize that I wanted to go into public service as opposed to the private sector. And so they were sort of instrumental in helping me, you know, shape what came next. You know, my life wasn't the life that I listed when I applied for the Truman, but the process of applying for the Truman helped me think about what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. So it's these things are worth doing. Anything else? Y'all have been super patient. Here's the thing that we're going to take this video, we're going to put it online. So if you want to go back and revisit it, if you have any friends who you think would be interested and just weren't able to join us today, all the information is available online. So it's on that website. In addition to the info that we've given you, there's also just a little quick guide that's, you know, helpful for students. I'm going to try and create timelines that aren't utterly confusing and put those up as well. And so, you know, you'll have a good sense of what is waiting for you. If you are a senior or if you are currently a junior, please be in touch with us, because now is the time to start thinking, and over the next 2-3 months is the time to start, you know, getting in a preliminary application for the Rhodes, and the Marshall, the Mitchell, and the Gates, and to start thinking about the Fulbright, because you want to get letters of invitation from abroad. That's not our office, but I'm passionate about the Fulbright, and so I will help you with that if you want me to help you think that through. I've been doing that for a long time. It's actually one of the motivations for building this office in the first place. And if you are like Laura and like Kennedy, if you're a sophomore, you've got a little bit more time, but really by the time you get back to school at the end of summer next year, hopefully we'll all be together in a physical space. That's the time when you're going to need to apply for the Wayne part of the Truman, the Udall, or the Goldwater. So that's where we're at. We'll put all that information up. We'll keep in, we'll just keep a light touch, but we've got your name and information. We know you're interested. If you want to fill out the form on the website, we will follow up with you just to give you that, to keep you in our mailing list and to let you know where we're at. And that's about it. And I'll hang out if anyone wants to ask any further questions that you didn't want to sort of share with the group, or you didn't want to take others' time on. I'll stay here for a while until we're done. And you can always reach out. Fellowships at wayne.edu is our email. And then Heidi and I have our own individual emails on the list. But fellowships at wayne.edu is the way to get to us all the time.
Thank
So
you
great.
both so much again for this information. It was really helpful, especially having it like verbally expressed. I'm so bad with just like websites, so this is really helpful.
Cool. That's our job. We love it. Thanks. See you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.